Okay, Physics 15 class. Today we're just going to start Chapter 12. We're just going to introduce it. There might be one or two questions on a test. That's about it. We're just going to get the ball rolling on electricity and magnetism. So of course we've all seen lightning. We all know it's some form of electricity, right? So we're going to start looking into that. All right. Yeah, so in the winter time when it's drier, you might notice, those of us that used to have hair, or we see people, right? If you comb your hair, it can get staticky, right? You might call it. You know that lightning is also a form of static electricity. So what does that mean, static? Well, we all pretty much know that electricity flows through wires, right? We have to plug in our devices, we have to charge our phones. There's two prongs. We kind of all know that electricity is flowing somehow. But there's also a way that electricity can be static, right? Where electrons are just sitting there. So that's what we're talking about here. Okay, so you can just have an electric charge. So what do they mean by electric charge? And we've all heard that. So here, like, the hair is repelling. The hairs are repelling each other, right? So there's some sort of field between the hairs that are I'm not going to say magic, but it would seem that way if you don't understand physics, right? That these hairs are mysteriously being repelled from each other, right? Or sometimes you're unwrapping something, the piece of plastic stuck, and you're like, what? Why is it sticking to me, right? Wrapping paper, or saran wrap type of thing. When you're wrapping food, it sticks, right? So why is that? And then also some places, like, you can get electric shock sometimes, just touching things, right? If it's dry, if you're walking on a carpet. So what causes that? Yeah, there's all kinds of devices that will show this. So here they have like two little balls. You can rub them with different, and you can make things repel each other, right? It's a little styrofoam, or if you order something online, they have what they call styrofoam peanuts. It's a packing material. Sometimes they'll repel each other. A lot of times it'll stick to stuff. It'll stick to your sweater or something like that. So there's attractive forces and there's repulsive forces, right? And electrostatic. So static force means that electricity isn't flowing through a wire. There's just electricity, there's a electrostatic force just sitting there, right? And yeah, various experiments, you can hear they have sort of this metal foil, and you touch it with different things. You can get the foil to either move and attract to each other, or be repelled away. So this is just, we're saying the same thing over and over here, pretty much. Benjamin Franklin, we all know who Benjamin Franklin was, right? He's one of our founding fathers for the United States of America. He helped form America, right? He went to France, convinced the French to fund our war against the British, right? And we achieved independence, right? What a lot of people know that Benjamin Franklin, he's famous for, he had a kite during a lightning storm. He was doing experiments in electricity. A lot of people might think he's just a tinkerer. He was not a tinkerer. He was a physicist. He understood mathematics. He understood the physics of the day. Benjamin Franklin was really smart. When he went to Europe, he hung with the physicists there who were coming up with all kinds of inventions and all kinds of discoveries. He was able to hold his own. He knew the math, he knew the physics, right? He was United States of America's first physicist, Benjamin Franklin. Well, he conducted all kinds of experiments, and it was him who came up with the terms positive and negative, right? Which we're familiar with those terms now. And then when he kind of described it at the time, of course, this was early on, he kind of described it as some objects sort of would have a fluid transferred to them, and maybe other objects had a fluid taken away. Well, now we know it's electrons. Electrons can be kind of taken off a surface of one sort of substance and placed on the surface of another, and that you'll have a positive or a negative charge. Of course, electrons are negatively charged. So if you put more electrons onto something, it'll be negatively charged. But if you take electrons away, now it'll be positively charged, right? And if it has just the right electrons, then it's neutrally charged. And I'm sure we've heard like charges repel each other, unlike charges attract each other, right? And depending if you're rubbing things, different substances, you'll have positive and or negative charge. It depends on these substances. So, yeah. So electrons, right? We all studied. You should have in high school. The structure of an atom. There's a nucleus in the center. It's positively charged, and then there's electrons that are on the outside of an atom. That's what we're talking about. Those small, so small, incredibly small, negatively charged particles that are part of the atomic structure, right? But those things, they can flow. You can strip them off of an atom, and they can go and collect in other areas, right? Yeah, so a negatively charged object has a surplus of electrons, and a positively charged object has a shortage of electrons. And different substances will go in one way or the other, right? We're just going to leave it at that. Okay, conductors or insulators. Well, we all have some experience with this. We know when you're plugging your phone in to charge it, for instance, you know that there's a wire, and there's a rubber outside part. Well, here I happen to have here. So here's the USB cable, right? There's an outer rubber part, and then there's a metal part that connects, right? So we all know the electricity flows in the metal part, and it has a rubber part on top so that we don't interfere with it. So the electricity can flow, and I'm not interfering with it because if you have a high enough voltage, we'll talk about that later, it can flow through skin. So a conductor is the metal part where electrons will flow through the structure of the metal, and then the insulating part, well, that inhibits, right? The electrons won't flow through that sort of thing. So that's what a conductor would be. The metals like copper, silver, iron, gold, right? Our bodies, if you have a high enough voltage, we'll get into that. Insulators are objects where electrons won't flow, right? We're going to get into that more later, you bet. Yeah, and then there are semiconductors. Semiconductors are devices that are in computers and transistors and all of the computers we have everywhere, where they're able to regulate charge, and you have ones and zeros inside of computers, and it's all very complex semiconductors, right? Those of you that go into engineering, you will study that further, electrical engineering. So, okay, and that's it. Introducing Chapter 12.